Vadai Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Givadhai Yashodanandana Bhajajana Anjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Anjana Yamunatira Vannachai Yamunatira Vannachai Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givadhai Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Givadhai Yashodanandana Bhajajana Anjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Anjana Yamunatira Vannachai Yamunatira Vannachai Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Bhava Shri Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Nam Chaiva Narotanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiyayet Naskapayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktiya Bhavati Naishtaki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Good morning. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Thank you for coming. Before I speak, I just want to say I don't really feel like I'm qualified to be here. If I'm able to say anything, it's just that I'm repeating the words of the acharyas, and I'm very fortunate that Krishna has been blessing me with the opportunity to get some taste, a little bit of taste for the holy name, for the Bhagavad Gita. I would say it's one of the most precious gifts that you can get if you have some taste for hearing about the Lord. So today we're hearing about we're Canto 4, Chapter 23. We're just about to start this new chapter. Maharaj Prithu is going back home. So we're getting towards the near end of this pastime here with Maharaj Prithu. So we saw that the world was in a really bad shape with King Vena. So then they got rid of him. They managed to get King Prithu and his wife Archie to come, which are Shakti-Avesh avatar, empowered incarnations of the Lord. And so now Maharaj Prithu, he has completed what he came here to do. He came here to reestablish the principles of religion. Yada yada dharmasya grahanya bhavati bharata abhuchana madharmasya. How does it end? I didn't hear. Yeah, Sambhavani Yogi, thank you. Which is that yada yada dharmasya. So whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice and an incline in irreligious practice, at that time I descend myself. So in the first text here, we're not going to go through it because we're going to focus on verse 11. But Prabhupada, in the first text, he actually talks about that this applies to Maharaj Prithu as well, because he's an incarnation of Krishna. So he came down to reestablish principles of religion. And so he did that. He gave, a couple of chapters ago, he gave some nice instructions to the citizens about Varnashram Dharma, doing your duty, but in Krishna consciousness. He also glorified the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas a lot, that we should serve, we should follow them. So in that case, he was leading by example by his instructions. And then in the last chapter that we just read, he was leading by example in terms of student. So then you see the 4 Kumaras showed up, and he saw them as being more exalted than them. He saw them as being his spiritual masters, and so he inquired from them, what is my duty? What is the ultimate goal of life? Even though he knew, he's empowered incarnation of the Lord. But you'll see that his whole appearance and disappearance is just like a show. It's just like for us. It's literally because he's eternally liberated, Nityasiddha. So everything that he did when he was here was literally just to show us, either from his own instructions or by example. So we're going to read all of these verses here. And now he's at a point where he's like, okay, I did what I had to do. Now I'm going to show it the example of what do you do at the end of your life as a devotee in order to reach the most auspicious result. So basically, Maharaj Prithu is about to take Vanaprastha at this point here. So there's 4 stages of life: Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. And so Brahmachari is the celibate student stage. It's usually from about the time that you're born until you're 25 years old. Nowadays, we're full on in Kali Yuga here. We're in the land of the Malechas and Yavanas. We can't follow these exact guidelines. Like for some of us, we're in Brahmachari ashram even after the age of 25 because we joined so late that got to make up for it. Typically, it goes until the age of 25, and then 25 you would get married, you would have kids, you would have a profession and these things. But you have to be ready for it. You have to be prepared, and this is why you have the training stage as a brahmachari, because there's so much opportunity for a sinful life once you have your own kind of independence, you have your own money, and these things. It's so easy to do all kinds of activities that are not pleasing to the Lord. So that's why we need this training stage. And then you have Grihastha for about 25 years, to the point where, okay, your kids are 25 years old. Hopefully they're able to take care of themselves. And then you can go into Vanaprastha. And Vanaprastha, Vana is forest, Prastha means to go. So it basically means like, I'm out, guys, I'm going to the forest, and I'm going to focus on my devotion to Lord Krishna. So this is where Maharaj Prithu is at now. So we'll read from verse 1 to 18, and then we'll focus on verse 11. So you can start.
At the last stage of his life, when Maharaj Prithu saw himself getting old, that great soul who was the king of the world divided whatever opulence he had accumulated amongst all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. He arranged pensions for everyone according to religious principles, and after executing the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in complete coordination with him, he dedicated his sons unto the earth, which was considered to be his daughter. Then Maharaj Prithu left the presence of his citizens, who were almost lamenting and crying from feeling separation from the king, and went to the forest alone with his wife to perform austerities.
So you see, this is the perfect method. This is what you do. You've had your life as a householder. You have your possessions, quote unquote. Everything belongs to Krishna, but you have things that Krishna is letting you use at that time. You have maybe a home. You have maybe some assets. You have maybe some children, but you remain detached because all of these things you were just things or people you were just using in Krishna's service the whole time, and you never felt like it belonged to you. So when it comes to time to take Vanaprastha, to detach, okay, you can give it out to whoever is deserving. Like, for example, something interesting that I see here is that he dedicated his sons unto the earth. So if we do a little rewind, we remember how the pastime of Maharaj Prithu started, that he was about to kill Mother Earth, actually. So it's a nice ending to the story, that now he's giving his sons to Mother Earth. That he says, which was considered to be his daughter. So this is a great example that a king or a ruler should see Mother Earth as being his daughter, actually, and treat her with the utmost respect. Okay, text 4.
After retiring from family life, Maharaj Prithu strictly followed the regulations of retired life and underwent severe austerities in the forest. He engaged in these activities as seriously as he had formerly engaged in leading the government and conquering everyone. In the Tapovana, Maharaj Prithu sometimes ate the trunks of roots of trees. Sometimes he ate the fruits and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank holy water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air.
So So you see here, you have a perfect example of the benefits of taking on austerities. So austerities is not just making yourself suffer for fun. It's a way to detach from the material energy, from the comforts, from the pleasures that have to do with the body and the mind, in order to more strongly attach to the spiritual energy or Krishna's energy. But it's important that we do it with proper guidance, following Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. There's certain austerities that are recommended at a certain time of life, like that. Not that we should just whimsically be like, okay, now I'm just gonna whatever, now I'm just gonna do the austerity of not showering for a week or whatever, something like that. Like, it has to be guided by proper authority, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, like that. So we can read text 6.
Following the principles of the force, living in the footsteps of the great sages and munis, Prithu Maharaj accepted 5 kinds of heating processes during the summer season, exposed himself to torrents of rain in the rainy season, and in the winter stood in water up to his neck. He also used to simply lie down on the floor to sleep.
Just really impressive, because we're talking about the king of the world. This is the king of the world. He had everything. He had the biggest kingdom, palaces, he had whatever he wanted, but you can tell he wasn't attached, because now he's able to just, go and do these things that we couldn't even imagine doing. So, text 7.
Maharaj Prithu underwent all these severe austerities in order to control his words and his senses, to refrain from discharging his, and to control the life air within his body. All this he did for the satisfaction of Krishna. He had no other purpose.
Yeah, so this is very important. Obviously this has to do with spirit souls that are in the male body. The semen of the male is actually really powerful, and it's really important that we try to keep it inside. It's a powerful force. Think about it. Little semen with the oval creates life, creates us, like our body, So think about the kind of power that is in this. And actually you see, like, if you manage to keep it inside, not artificially, because, you have to do it reasonably, but if you manage to keep it inside with yoga, not with artificial renunciation, but with the practice of yoga, you'll see that the semen will actually start to go up, and it'll actually go up to the brain, and it'll actually increase your ability to develop spiritually, especially if you do headstands.
By thus practicing severe austerities, Maharaj Prithu gradually became steadfast in spiritual life and completely free of all desires for fruitive actions. He also practiced breathing exercises to control his mind and senses, and by such control he became completely free from all desires of fruitive activity. Thus the best amongst human beings, Maharaj Prithu followed that path of spiritual advancement which was advised by Sanat Kumara. That is to say, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna.
So this is a good example of how Maharaj Prithu is a perfect disciple in the sense that, okay, he's like, I got my instructions from Sanat Kumara, who are pure devotees, liberated souls, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to do what they told me to do. So keep going, text in.
Maharaj Prithu thus engaged completely in the devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to the principle 24 hours daily. Thus his love and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, developed and became unflinching and fixed. By regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaj became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus, he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. When he became completely free from the conception of bodily life, Maharaj Prithu realized Lord Krishna sitting in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. Thus able to get all the instructions from him, he gave up all other practices of yoga and gnana. He was not even interested in the perfection of yoga and gnana systems, for he truly realized the devotional service of Lord Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, that unless the yogis and jnanis become attracted to Krishna Katha, narrations about Krishna, their illusions concerning existence can never be dispelled.
So this is really interesting because when you actually look at the kind of practices that Maharaj Prithu was doing, it seems to fall more in line with like Ashtanga yoga, right? Like what you think like mystic yoga, performing all kinds of austerities, strict brahmacharya, and then you'll see a little bit further on he's doing like pranayama, he's doing like breathing exercises, and you'll see he's gonna block the different channels of prana so that anyways, I'm not gonna spoil it, but this seems to be Ashtanga yoga. However, you'll see the beautiful thing with bhakti is that it doesn't exclude like any practices, even if it might seem Ashtanga or it might seem Gyan or it might seem karma. If it's done in order to increase your Krishna consciousness and connect you more to Krishna, then it's considered bhakti, actually. But I would say this is not something we can necessarily imitate nowadays because we're talking about Shaktiya Vaishavatar and we're talking about a different yuga. So I tried to Google it. It seems like it's from Satya Yuga. I don't know if anybody can correct me on that, but that was the prescribed method of self-realization at the time, was actually Ashtanga yoga. Nowadays, it's not really practical for us to do this. Luckily, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us Mahamantra, and that's enough. So, text 13. Can you pass the microphone, Prabhu? Thank you.
In due course of time, when Prithu Maharaja was to give up his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus completely situated on the Brahmabhuta platform, he gave up the material body. When Maharaja Prithu practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the door of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upwards, passing it onto the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. In this way, Prithu Maharaja gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. Keep going.
How many do we do usually? 2? 3? You can just finish it, or you can let Prabhu read also. You can read.
Text 16, in this way, according to different positions of the various parts of the body, Prithu Maharaj merged the holes of his senses with the sky. His bodily liquids such as blood and various secretions with the totality of water, and he merged earth with water, then water with fire, fire with air, air with sky, and so on. He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects according to their respective positions. And he also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahatattva. Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity onto the supreme controller of illusory energy, being released from all the designations by which the living entity became entrapped. He became free by knowledge and renunciation and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in this original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave this body as a Prabhu or controller of the senses.
So what you see happening here, as Prithu Maharaj, he's reaching moksha, he's reaching liberation through the practice of yoga, and what happens is it's kind of reconstruction. So at the time of creation, it starts with Mahatattva, and then it breaks into all of these different elements one after another. And now what you see is it's all coming back together into Mahatattva. Mahatattva is the great truth, or the great existence of the material energy that comprises everything. So we'll go to text 11. That's our text of the day, and we can recite that together. Tasyanya bhagavata parikama shuddha. Tasyanaya bhagavata parikama shuddha. Sadvatmanastadanu samsmarana putya. Jnanam virakti madabun nishitena yena. Chiche dasam shayapadam nija jiva kosham. Please recite. Tasyanaya bhagavata parikama shuddha. Sadvatmanastadanu samsmarana putya. Jnanam virakti madabun nishitena yena. Chichedasam shayapadam nija jiva kosham. So we'll move on for the interest of time. So we can repeat after me. Synonyms: tasya, his; anaya, by this; bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead; parikrama, activities in devotional service; shuddha, pure, transcendental; sattva, existence; atmana, of the mind; tat, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead; anusamsmarana, constantly remembering; anuputya, being perfectly done; jnanam, knowledge; virakti, non-attachment; mat, possessing; abhut, became manifested; nishitena, by sharpened activities; yena, by which; chicheda, become separated; samshayapadam, position of doubtfulness; nija, own; jiva kosham, engagement of the living entity. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. By regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaj became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge, by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. Purport. In the Narada Pancharatra, devotional service to the Lord is likened unto a queen. When a queen gives an audience, many maidservants follow her. The maidservants of devotional service are material opulence, liberation, and mystic powers. The karmis are very much attached to material enjoyment. The jnanis are very anxious to become freed from material clutches, and the yogis are very fond of attaining the 8 kinds of mystic perfection. From the Narada Pancharatra, we understand that if one attains the stage of pure devotional service, he also attains all the opulences derived from fruitive activities, empiric philosophical speculation, and mystic yogic practice. Srila Bilva Mangal Thakur therefore prayed in his Krishna Karnamrita, "My dear Lord, if I have unflinching devotion to you, you become manifest before me personally, and the results of fruitive activity and empiric philosophical speculation, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, become like personal attendants and remain standing before me as if awaiting my order." The idea here is that the jnanis, by culture of Brahma Vidya, spiritual knowledge, struggle very hard to get out of the clutches of material nature. But a devotee, by dint of his advancement in devotional service, automatically becomes detached from his material body. When the devotee's spiritual body begins to manifest, he actually enters into his activities in transcendental life. So this is a very important point, actually. I find it really interesting. And I haven't seen it that many times in the Bhagavatam. But the idea that by the practice of bhakti, you can actually get everything that you can get in other yogas. Like Prabhupada refers here to if you do karma, not karma yoga, but just karma, like you're a karmi. So you're just doing activities for the results. You're doing activities because you want certain material results. Well, Prabhupada says you can get that also. You can get material opulence. You can get sense gratification from bhakti. But the devotee doesn't care. He's not doing it for that. And Prabhupada is a perfect example of all of this, because Prabhupada didn't care about having any material opulences. He, when he was in Vrindavan, he was living very simply. And he was happy like this. He had like the bare minimum, but he was just focusing on serving Krishna. He would accept whatever he can get. But by the end of his life, he technically owned hundreds of buildings around the world, 108 temples. He had thousands of disciples. He can get whatever he wanted. He wrote, the disciples gave him like fancy cars and Rolex watches. And that's because he was serving the Lord. So you can get that. Another thing is mystic powers. So that's something we don't hear so much about in terms of Prabhupada, but he had mystic powers also. His disciples say, if you listen to Prabhupada memories on YouTube, you'll see that there's a few stories. There's one story where the devotees I think it was in France, they had to go do a trip. They had to take a train from one place to another. And they told Prabhupada their plan. They're like, okay, we're going to take this train there, and we're going to, go there. And then Prabhupada was like, he's like, actually, you shouldn't take that train. You should take this other train and go there. And they were like, what are you talking about? This is obviously the fastest, cheapest way. And then Prabhupada was just like, you gonna listen to your spiritual master or not? And they didn't. They actually didn't, because they were like, oh, we saw that what the best plan is. And guess what? The train broke down. It didn't go, actually. So he knew. Another story was there was a devotee who he wanted, before initiation, he's like, I really want this particular name. He's like, I've decided I want this name. He's like, maybe if I keep meditating on it, Krishna will fulfill my desire. So he got to the point of the initiation. He was sitting in front of Prabhupada, and he was just thinking about that name. And Prabhupada just looked at him, and then he looked at one of his assistants. And he asked him, he's like, do we have a disciple under X name, under that name? And he's like, yeah, we have one in Austria or something. And then he gave him another name. So he actually read his mind, and he didn't. So anyways, so many stories like that. But Prabhupada didn't care, and he didn't flaunt it. He wasn't like, oh, look at me, I can do all of these mystic powers or whatever. That's not what he was doing it for. I really like this analogy of bhakti is like a queen, and then all of the maidservants are like, the opulences or the powers. And so naturally, if you have the queen, you'll have the maidservants there also. So it's like that. At present, we have contacted a material body, material mind, and material intelligence. But when we become free from these material conditions, our spiritual body, spiritual mind, and spiritual intelligence become manifest. In that transcendental state, a devotee attains all the benefits of karma, jnana, and yoga. Although he never engages in fruitive activities or empiric speculation to attain mystic powers, automatically mystic powers appear in his service. A devotee does not want any kind of material opulence, but such opulence appears before him automatically. He does not have to endeavor for it. Because of his devotional service, he automatically becomes Brahma Bhuta. As stated before, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan Brahma Bhuya yakalpate. One who is engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Because of his regular discharge of devotional service, a devotee attains the transcendental stage of life. Since his mind is transcendentally situated, he cannot think of anything but the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the meaning of the word samsmarana anupurtya. By constantly thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, the devotee immediately becomes situated in Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva refers to that platform which is above the modes of material nature, including the mode of goodness. In the material world, the mode of goodness is considered to be representative of the highest perfection, but one has to transcend this mode and come to the stage of Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness, where the three qualities of material nature cannot act. So you have sattva, which is the mode of goodness, which is like, pure goodness, is calm, is peaceful, like you go in the nature. I used to live at this ashram in the woods, in the mountains. It was really beautiful. They had the big mountains. It was really peaceful. We would do our meditation. We would do our yoga. I even had my own little cabin in the woods. It was very much sattva. But was it Shuddha Sattva? I don't know. The philosophy was impersonalist. So in a way, we weren't so much, it wasn't so much transcendental. And then I moved to Toronto, like downtown Toronto, where it's super busy, and I went to the ISKCON Toronto temple. And the people at the ashram I was at, they're like, are you crazy? Like, you're gonna hate it. Like, you're gonna miss the trees, you're gonna miss the fresh air, you're gonna miss the lake. But I didn't miss it at all, because I was now in an environment that is Shuddha Sattva, which is transcendental goodness. Like this temple, for example. Look at this place. This is like the spiritual world. This is actually unbelievable. Maybe if you grew up here, you come here all the time, you get used to it, but my Krishna, look at this. And then you go outside and you just walk, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, it's a whole other world out there. You know what I mean? So the environment of the city is not sattva. Definitely not Shuddha Sattva, but you come here and this is Shuddha Sattva. So you actually get like a gateway. Like these paintings, Prabhupada said, these are gateways into the spiritual world. Actually, it's like a window, you said, window into the spiritual world. So I know we're supposed to like wrap up here. I think there's like 2 paragraphs. We can just quickly read them. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the following example. If one has strong digestive power after eating, he automatically lights a fire within his stomach to digest everything and does not need to take medicine to aid his digestion. Similarly, the fire of devotional service is so strong that a devotee does not need to act separately to attain perfect knowledge or detachment from material attractions. A jnani may become detached from material attractions, but by prolonged discussions on subjects of knowledge, and may in this way finally come to the Brahma Bhuta stage, but a devotee does not have to undergo so much trouble. By virtue of his devotional service, he attains the Brahma Bhuta stage without a doubt. The yogis and jnanis are always doubtful about their constitutional position. Therefore, they mistakenly think of becoming one with the Supreme. However, a devotee's relationship with the Supreme becomes manifest beyond all doubt, and he immediately understands that his position is that of eternal servant of the Lord. Jnanis and yogis without devotion may think themselves liberated, but actually their intelligence is not as pure as that of a devotee. In other words, the jnanis and yogis cannot become factually liberated unless they become elevated to the position of devotees. Aruya kuchena param padam tata patantya do nadrita yusmat angaya. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:2-32. The Jnanis and Yogis may rise to the highest position, Brahman realization, but because of their lack of devotion onto the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down into material nature. Therefore, Jnana and Yoga should not be accepted as the real processes for liberation. By discharging devotional service, Maharaj Prithu automatically transcended all these positions. Since Maharaj Prithu was a Shaktivesh incarnation of the Supreme Lord, he did not have to act in any way to attain liberation. He came from the Vaikuntha world or spiritual sky in order to execute the will of the Supreme Lord on earth. Consequently, he was to return home back to Godhead without having to execute Gyan, Yoga, or Karma. Although Prithu Maharaj was externally a pure devotee of the Lord, he nonetheless adopted the process of devotional service in order to teach the people in general the proper process for executing the duties of life and ultimately returning home back to Godhead. So one final point I wanted to make was a devotee, or in this example here, Maharaj Prithu, who's a devotee who's practicing bhakti yoga. They tend to have a lot more humility, actually, than people that practice Gyan or yoga or karma yoga. Does anybody have any idea why does the bhakti yogi have more humility than a Jnani or a yogi? Yes, Prabhu. We have a microphone? No?
I would say, from my perspective, that within Bhakti, in Vaishnavism and in general, it's more dualistic. It's more about devotional service. It's not as opposed to Advaita or Saivism, where you're striving to become one with God. It's more about service to God, more dualistic. That's
Yes, very good point. Anybody else have any?
Krishna, I think they also, I might be repeating Justin's point, they believe that everything that they have came from God, so they don't have any arrogance as a result.
Yes, that's the point, actually. If you're a Jnani or a yogi, you're thinking, hey, look at this mountain here, the mountain of self-realization. Look at me. I'm going to do everything I can to climb this mountain. I'm going to do these austerities, I'm going to do these practices, I'm going to study the Vedic literatures because I am myself, I'm going to climb this mountain. And so naturally, if you get closer to the top of the mountain, you can get some pride, you can get some arrogance. Actually, when I was at this other ashram, Shivananda ashram, we studied Raja Yoga, we studied Ashtanga Yoga. And one of the final stages of advancement in Ashtanga Yoga is you get these mystic powers. Actually, it's said like that, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. But it's said that it's like the most dangerous stage, actually. They say it's very easy to fall down if you start to get prideful and you start to use it for your own enjoyment. You can lose all of the assets that you've gained before, whereas the devotee doesn't have to worry about that, because the devotee, it's like he's at the bottom of the mountain and he's just trying to please Krishna, who owns the mountain, so that Krishna can start to bring him up. He can put him on his skidoo and go him up slowly up the mountain. And the devotee doesn't think, hey, out of my own will or my own activities, I made it up there. The devotee understands I'm completely dependent on Guru and Krishna, actually. And Krishna, at any point, he can just cut the bhakti lata, the creeper of bhakti that we're trying to water with our practices of devotional service. Ultimately, Krishna can just come with the scissors and just go, whoop. And all you have to do is, if you start to offend devotees, you offend the holy name, you don't listen to the instructions, you offend the spiritual master, it's over. Or at least it's badly damaged. It's really hard to come back. So this is the things I wanted to say. I kind of went off track. The point of the class was supposed to be about vanaprastha, so the idea of you know, you finished your life, you finished your duties, maybe you don't have dependents that need you so much. Maybe your kids can take care of themselves. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna just go all in for Krishna now. All in for Krishna. Nowadays, it's not really practical. You can't really go to the forest. I don't know which forest in Dallas you would go to. But it's more about the principle of like, okay, I'm at this stage of my life where, and you can still, like you said, the interesting thing, he stayed with his wife. It said he went alone to the forest with his wife. So it's interesting. He was with his wife, but they were alone in the sense that they were both focusing on their final stage of life of self-realization. And you'll see in the next verses, Archie actually did the same thing. She started to perform all these austerities. So yeah, any questions, reflections, or corrections? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, I have a question.
Yeah.
So Prithu Maharaj was able to do yoga and combine himself with the Supreme Godhead. And Prithu Maharaj himself is an incarnation of Krishna. Would we be able to follow the same path that he did to reach moksha, or like a similar path, or does he have some special, not privilege, but like does he have his own way of doing it because he is God?
I would say there's many things we can be inspired by, but then some things that we have to have some reservations on. Like, for example, like I said, one thing is Shakti Vaishavatar. Another thing is a different yuga. It's a different era of time, long time ago, where some things were possible back then that are not so possible nowadays. But some things we can be inspired by was the general mood of detachment from family, from his work. He left his kingdom. He took on some austerities. He started to live more simply. You know, at this stage of life, maybe you can just, you know, eat just to keep the body and soul together. At that stage of life, you're not trying to eat 20 gulab jamans every morning, you know. You're trying to like, because if you leave your body still attached to the material world, Krishna is going to be like, okay, he likes the material world. I'm going to send him back there. It's like that. He's been fulfilling desires of living entities since time immemorial. So we have to show him, hey, Krishna, actually, I want you. I don't want your Maya. I don't want your material world. I don't want your video game that you created for me so that I could have fun without you. He's like, I'm sick of the game. Please just bring me back to you. So to answer your questions, like, for example, you know, I don't think we really need to put our heel in our anus and like, you know, these things. This is like Ashtanga yoga, and yeah, but there's definitely some things we can be inspired by in that. Does that answer your question a little bit? Yes. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions or reflections on that? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for the class. I found it interesting because it just hit me for the first time when you were saying that you were talking about the different stages of life, like brahmachari, grahastha. What's after that?
Vanaprastha.
What is it?
Vanaprastha.
Yeah, that one always skips my mind, but it's just interesting because now I can see how our society is so backwards, or like modern day or Kali Yuga society, their classes. Like I can imagine children, their brahmachari period is just cut so short, and it's all lacking because of like the ignorance of there being a supreme God. Because it won't make sense why you should stay back from sense gratification. Like you're holding back for 25 years because it's a dangerous thing. Like when you were talking about it, it made me like fearful or like empathetic for the fear of going into the material world, because we're still involved ourselves, but we have to be careful. And then it's like when we retire in Kali Yuga societies, it's to indulge in sense gratification. But according to the system, when you retire from material life or your job or your duties, you're supposed to just give yourself completely to God. I really appreciate like just getting that reminder in this class.
Thank you, Prabhu. Those are some really nice points, actually. It said, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that what is night for the materialist is day for the introspective sage, and what is day for the materialist is night for the introspective sage. So that always just fascinates me to see like how everything is upside down in the material world compared to in Krishna consciousness. So like you said, typically at the end of life, you're like, okay, I've been working hard my whole life. I've been working this 9 to 5 I don't even like, so that I can save up and maybe go on vacation once in a while and try to forget my work, but actually I can't forget my work because it's just too much a part of my consciousness. And then you're just like, well, at least I'm going to save up, I'm going to have a nice pension, I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to go to do a big Euro trip. I'm definitely not going to go to India because that's a spiritual place and I'm not interested in that. But it doesn't really make sense, even from a materialist point of view, because at that point your body is not even really able to enjoy so much the material energy anyways. But the devotee, he sees it very differently. The devotee sees, okay, the end of life means I have to go all in for Krishna. Everything that I've done throughout my life will culminate in this moment right now. And you can't just think, I'm going to just live my material life, and at the end of the life, then I'll focus on Krishna, because that's not how consciousness works. That's not how the mind works. It's like a computer. It's like an algorithm. Everything you feed into it will generate a certain result. And to try to unwind, to undo everything, it takes and I'm seeing that right now, it takes a long time just to slowly chip away at my samskaras, the impressions that I've created from all of the sinful activities that I've done in this life and God knows in other lives. So we should take it very seriously right now. Because we don't have that much time, like a lifespan, how long can it be? 70 years, maybe 80 years or something like that, to undo countless lives of impressions and it's serious in the sense that for our own benefit, for us to be happy. It's not serious like, oh, we should have a stern face and be like, oh, this is serious. It's serious in the sense that if we take this seriously, we'll actually be happy. We'll actually be reach the highest form of bliss and satisfaction. So it's like that. It's like that. Okay. Anything else for Bruce? Yes? Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a nice class. I don't have anything really new to add, but I was just appreciating today's verse, how we heard all of the activities that Prithu Maharaj did, the different forms of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, and Jnana yoga. But it says right here, he became transcendental in mind and could constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. How? By regularly discharging devotional service.
Yeah.
And when I hear about Gyan and Ashtanga yoga, I practice today's yoga, which we know is nothing like Ashtanga yoga, where you'd be hanging from trees for thousands of years in Shirshasana. But those all sound so daunting. But we're doing devotional service right now. We're regularly coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class, and so Krishna is so merciful that just by regularly doing these things, maybe one day we can constantly think of his lotus feet.
I like the point that, as long as anything, Srila Rupa Goswami says, you accept everything favorable to devotional service, you reject everything unfavorable. So we don't have to be fanatic in the sense that, oh, these things are bad, these things are good. Like, for example, for me, if I don't do my half an hour of yoga in the morning, it's hard. My body hurts, my shoulder hurts or whatever. So as long as you can always dovetail it in Krishna's service, then it's really beneficial as well. Yeah, one last thing in the verse. I'm glad you brought it back to the verse, and then I'll close off. So I like, when he says, thus he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. So this is actually the goal. This is actually what needs to happen for us if we want to reach the Brahmabhuta stage, or the stage of liberation. We need to transcend destroy the false ego. Because the false ego is false identities, is thinking I'm this body, I'm this mind. And then there's ahankar, which is false ego, but there's also mamakar. I think I'm pronouncing that. So ahankar is false idea of who I am. And then mamakar is false ideas of what is mind. So to think that my son is mine, my house is mine, these are mine. This is mamakar. This is also, it's like kind of a byproduct of ahankar. And these are also we should try to give up. Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatubhyascha kipasindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.